Hello and welcome to Stylish Chats for Creatives. Today on the episode I've got Amy Vreeke. I'm also not Dot Cotton even though I sound like her today. I've just got a bit of a bacterial infection so my throat's a little bit off. But anyway, here's Amy Vreeke. Hello my love, how are you?
Hello, I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right considering I'm sound croakier than I've been smoking 40 a day. But yeah, good.
Oh, good.
So I'll just fill the listeners in a little bit. We first met because you did a Endo kind of workshop thing for your comedy sketch. Have I said that you're a comedian? I feel like
I don't know if you have. People
I don't
should
know.
know. But they're going to be disappointed if I'm not funny, though, if you say that at the beginning.
So Amy is a Northwest comedian based in Manchester, aren't you?
Yes, I am, yeah.
Yeah. So, we got, you put a call out about gathering a selection of people to, I guess, research.
Yeah, I was writing a show about endometriosis and I wanted to meet more people with it and to hear their stories and to kind of, research what should be in the show. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And you came along.
Yeah. And I think I brought my mum one week as well.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Love that.
She came back and she was like, whoa, all these women still get up in the morning. I was like, yeah.
I know. It was a really good group, actually, wasn't it? I was like amazed by how everybody came and was just so ready to like talk and be really honest. And it was a really nice like space where I felt like everyone just shared so much. But yeah, it did make you like, oh God. It definitely made me like feel like a sense of togetherness, but also a sense of, wow, there's so much that needs to be said on this subject.
Yeah, I think it's so broad because there's so many variants to it, and you might be on the lower end of the spectrum of it, but be in really high pain, or be on the higher end. Like there was a lady there who was on the higher end of like endo, but she wasn't in much pain.
Yeah. It's and that's the thing with it. It's like, you know, because some people say, people I know with it go, oh, you've probably got it worse than me. And it's like, well, first of all, we're not in a competition. And second of all, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't correlate like that anyway, like you say. And it's such a, like, confusing disease like that because you can be in so much pain, some people, and then they have surgery and they're like, oh, yeah, you had a tiny bit of endometriosis here. Or you can... not be in too much pain, have the surgery, and they're like, oh, you were riddled with it. It's very strange. But, I think last time I had surgery, a few years ago, I had, like, they say it in stages, don't they? But I can never remember what stage it was, but it was pretty bad. Like, things were stuck together and some things had to be, like, removed. Like, part of my bowel was removed and stuff like that. So it was pretty bad, but the time before that it wasn't as bad, you know, and I was still in the same amount of pain. So
I feel like I was similar to you. My first surgery, they found like a handful of tiny bits, and then my second one, he went, oh, I couldn't find your appendix. And I was like, what? I've not had it taken out.
Oh my God, it is, and it's just crazy that like you were saying before, there's so many people with it now, and I feel like it's brilliant because it's not brilliant, loads of people have it. It's brilliant that there seems to be so much more awareness and people seem to be getting diagnosed a lot more and to be, you know, finding it easier to get through the healthcare system, because I know with me it was a nightmare. So I'm really happy to know that anyone that is suffering is at least getting the care that they need quicker. Yeah.
I think like somebody asked me how long it took for me to get diagnosed, and I think I was 27. And I think from then I had like 3 or 4 years where they didn't know what the hell was up prior to that. So
Yeah, I think, well, I started with symptoms when I first started my period when I was about 12. And I didn't get diagnosed until I was 22, I think it was. So it was like 10 years of a lot of doctor's appointments and misdiagnoses and all of that stuff. But then again, saying what I said before about people now kind of getting through a bit more, I feel like most of those women, though, have been suffering for years, and they've, you know, it's now that there's a bit more awareness that they're getting kind of treatment and stuff. But I know that it is still difficult. I still found it difficult once I'd been diagnosed to get.
Yeah, same.
I couldn't believe it. I remember like waiting for ages for this gynecology appointment, and I just thought, oh, it'll be fine because I can just go in and go, I've been diagnosed with endometriosis, so I need you to do a laparoscopy. But actually, she was like, no, that won't be that. Have you tried eating more like fibre? And I was like, and then tested me for gonorrhea, and I'm like, every time you go about anything, it's like, oh, we'll give you some STI tests, regardless of what you say your sexual activity is or whatever. It's just the go-to. And you know what? It's no shame for people that have STIs, but I knew what was wrong with me. I had a diagnosis. I was going through all this stuff. And to get to that point, after already having surgery and going back through it, and for someone to not believe you again, I was like, are you kidding? It took me 10 years to get to the first point. It was really frustrating.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned on a previous podcast episode that I had the same, and then that prompted me to go private because it really pissed me off. Yeah. And then just the sheer joy I got, and this is really messed up, but the sheer joy I got from sending my gynecologist's notes back to my GP and then him going, oh yeah, you were in pain. I was like, of course I was. I wasn't lying to you. Like, I'm not going to sit here and waste your time. Yeah. Like, I don't know about you, but I find like, unless I'm really ill, I don't go to the doctors because I don't want to waste their time.
Yeah, and I think like that I felt exactly the same. That made me go private because I'd already waited months for this appointment on the NHS. And then I got it, and I remember just feeling like so deflated and just defeated after that, because I was like, what do I do now? Literally in a position where I was like, I can barely go to work. I'm so poorly. I was in so much pain constantly. And I just thought, where do I go from here? Like, so you're just not going to listen to me? Because there's no long-term support either.
No, there isn't.
So I find that really frustrating. I always say, if you've got diabetes or asthma or any other kind of long-term health condition or chronic illness, you have regular appointments where you go for checkups, and you know what I mean? You're kind of monitored. And with endometriosis, there's absolutely none of that. So you're just left. Even if you have the surgery, you have your post-op appointment, and then you're back to just having you have to basically just wait for it to come back and go to your doctors again. And it's so, so frustrating. But yeah, so then after that appointment, I was like, well, I had like my mum and my husband were like, we're gonna help you go private. And then I had surgery, and that's when I had it so bad that like part of my bowel had to be removed and things were unstuck, and it was quite a longer surgery than they thought. But like you, I was like, I'm sending this to that fucking gynecologist. Do you know what I mean? Like, you just told me to eat more brown bread. Like, I couldn't believe it. Sat in that appointment, and but I did get joy out of going. Like, see, more because it feels like you're going, right. Are you going to start listening to women now? You know what I mean? And she was a woman, that gynecologist. I think that sometimes, I know a lot of people say like, oh, men don't understand it and they prefer seeing female doctors, which I do understand. But sometimes for me, I've felt like the female doctors who don't get period pains or aren't in pain, or, they kind of dismiss it just as much as the male doctors. It's, but.
Yeah, I feel I agree with you. I've had a male and a female surgeon, and I think the female surgeon understood the pain but wasn't quite as good at the surgery.
Yeah.
And then the guy was just like so chilled out, and he made you feel more comfortable. And then he was like, I really understand your pain. But also on that side, because he was a surgeon, he came from a surgical point of view. So when I was asking him about nutrition, you know, to help, because soy really affects me and some other foods.
Yeah.
He was like, no, you can go and see one if you want, but I don't really have anybody that I could refer you to. And it's like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. Nobody sees it as a holistic thing. And I think that that's still the case. I went off my own back to see a dietitian after my second surgery. When it started to feel ill again, I was like, oh, I don't want to just keep having surgeries. Like I need to try and manage this. And like I say, there's no long-term health plan on, you know, the NHS. So yeah, I went to a dietitian and it did actually really help me like manage my symptoms. And that was a couple of years ago now. And I lost quite a lot of weight, but that wasn't the aim. I went with the aim to be like, I need to feel better and I just want to be able to function basically, and without having to have surgeries every 1 or 2 years. And yeah, there's certain things that affect me, like caffeine. Really, I can't have caffeine. I have to have decaf. And yeah, certain things, you know, like, I mean, I fucking love beer, but unfortunately beer isn't avoidable. It's all inflammatory stuff, isn't it? That's bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think that helped, and just trying to like have a bit more of a balanced lifestyle, a bit less stress and all of that kind of stuff does I mean, it's nowhere, it's not like a cure and it doesn't stop it, but it helped me personally to manage it a bit more.
Yeah, I'm the same. Like, I know if I eat too much dairy, too much soy, like tofu and things, or my caffeine intake, I'm not quite as reactive with caffeine, but I can only have like a couple a day and that's it. I can't really go any further. And then I'm the same as you, like stress is a really big one for me. I look 6 months pregnant if I'm stressed.
Yeah, it's really bad, and you don't realise, and I think that that's something with all kind of health, is that stress is such a massive factor for it. I mean, for me, it all changed when I got pregnant with my baby, because obviously all your hormones change, and so I was like, oh my god, I don't have to have a period for 9 months. This is amazing.
Yeah, the dream.
But then I just felt I had all the other pregnancy symptoms you could have. But yeah, and then after pregnancy, I mean, Bobby's just turned 2 in December, and it's just started now coming back. So I've had my first period after having Bobby. I was like, oh my god, this is what a normal period feels like. Like, I just came on and was like, fuck, this is normal. Like, I can just walk around, and because I was really worried, like, how I'd manage having a baby and being in that much pain. But I had a good couple of years of kind of feeling a bit like a normal person, and then it's gradually started creeping back in again. I'm just really reluctant to go. I just the thought of starting that whole process again is very daunting, really. But
yeah I understand that, because you're almost starting back at square one again every time you go.
Exactly.
How do you cope with your endo and your little one as well? Do you find it like a lot of hard work, or are you able to go off and have like time by yourself? Or
it's really hard. It's hard because it's like, before, when you've got endo, you feel guilty about not being able to work and letting people down and all of that stuff, whereas now the guilt's more like, oh, I'm just not being a very fun mum. You know what I mean? And or like, oh, he wants me to pick him up, but I'm in too much pain, or that kind of thing. It is hard. I do have, so I work part-time, my husband works full-time, so there's not, and my mum lives quite far away, but she does come up and visit, and my brother lives around the corner, and he's really helpful. So some days he like works in hospitality, so he might have like a Tuesday off one week.
Oh yeah.
And if it's at the right timing, it's wonderful because I can just go around and sit on his sofa and Bobby plays with him. Do you know what I mean? And I get a bit of like time to just relax. And it is difficult. I think if I really can't do it, then Steve will have to take a day off work to look after him. But I had really bad period over Christmas, like really, really bad in between Christmas and New Year. But luckily Steve was off then. So he could help. But it's that thing of like, I don't have a choice if I feel like that and I can't physically look after him. I have to try and find another alternative. And it's harder than saying, oh, I can't come to work today, to be like, I can't look after my own child today. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think I'm just trying to navigate that a bit. And I think really making use of the help that I do have is really important and not feeling guilty for it, because I think at the end of the day, if I always think if somebody was to say this to me, what would I say to them? And I think what I'd say to them is a good thing my therapist taught me, is like, you're doing amazingly and he's not going to notice like the odd day, or he's not going to kind of remember the odd day here and there that you couldn't pick him up, or that, you know, my brother had to have him. He loves being around the rest of my family and stuff. So yeah, I've just got to try and remember that it's not affecting him as much as it's affecting me, and as much as I feel that. So yeah. I can't imagine like the guilt that you must feel, because I feel guilty when I'm sat at home and I'm in pain and I'm like, oh God, I've had to cancel work and I can't walk the dog and I can't cook tea and I can't like do the housework or whatever. I've just got to sit, and you feel this like, it's almost like in the pit of your stomach, like guilt, isn't it? Yeah. And it's really hard as well, because it's like I really thrive off like being up and about and outside and doing things. Like I love being busy, you know, taking Bobby out as well. So I think he's got used to that too, because I've always been like, you know, quite like active person. So yeah, when I'm just sat there, it makes me just feel a bit shit anyway, because I'm just sat around like feeling like, oh. And yeah, much harder when you can't just sit and like wallow in it. You've got like a 2-year-old there kind of going, mummy, 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 or wanting to do things. But I am starting to find good. I mean, he's just getting to the age now where he'll sit and watch TV for a bit. So that's nice. But it's this classic mum guilt of, you know, stupid things of like, oh God, he's watched too much TV today, or he's had his dummy a lot today, and you know, that kind of thing. And then I just think, oh my God, you've got through the day, he's fine, he's probably thinking, yes, I get to sit and watch TV with my dummy in. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's absolutely fine. So,
he's probably had the best day.
Yeah, exactly. But it's very cute, because if I've got tummy ache, he is very lovely. But then he'll start saying that he's got tummy ache. But I think he just does it. He's like, I've got tummy ache too, mummy. Like, can I come on the sofa and have a cuddle? And I'm like, yeah. And so, do you know what I mean? It is like, yeah, you've got to try and make the most of it in those situations and do what you can to, like make sure, as long as he's safe, do you know what I mean? Then that's all that matters, isn't it? So yeah,
exactly. So how's your work been since having Bobby, and how are you fitting in with Bobby and your endo and things like that?
Yeah, it's been good. I think last year, so when I first went back to work, I absolutely didn't want to go back after maternity leave. I just really, really struggled with not being with Bobby. He still didn't sleep at that time. So I was like running on nothing. And it's crazy, because you've just had this completely transformative experience. And you're like, I was all over the place. I didn't really know what I even wanted to do anymore. And then I've got this like, it feels like your heart on your outside of your body, and all of a sudden after being with them every second of every day. You've got to just give them to somebody else, and they don't want to go, and you don't want them to go. And then you've got to sit and focus on something other than all of that. It's just like, it's really difficult going back to work, for me anyway. I know some people really look forward to it, and in a way I did, but yeah, it was hard. But slowly I started to get used to it. Bobby started to sleep a bit more once he turned like 1. So that made it a lot easier. I only work part-time. But yeah, and now I really love it. Now I'm like, oh, thank God, because there was part of me that was like, could we make it work without me working? But now I feel like I'm really glad that I kind of pushed through that. It's hard as well because I am freelance, so I don't get kind of as much support. I know there'll be loads of companies that don't give people very good support, but I think some places have like really good back to work things for mums and, you know, good support and HR and all of those kind of things.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're freelance, you're just kind of like, oh, I've just got to get myself through this. There isn't that kind of infrastructure. But I am glad that I pushed through it and I kept going. And I was writing a show about like prenatal and postnatal mental health, because when I was pregnant I got prenatal anxiety and depression. So I was like, oh, I should write about this. It felt like when I started writing about endometriosis and I'd share it and there'd be and there would be you know, loads of people getting in touch saying, oh, I've been through this, no one ever talks about it, all that kind of thing. And as soon as I started kind of blogging about like prenatal mental health, there was loads of women getting in touch saying, oh, I never talked to anyone about it, and I think it led to postnatal problems, and just women saying, yeah, I really struggled in pregnancy. But there's such a stigma around being anxious or depressed when you're pregnant. It's supposed to be like the best time of your life and you should just be so grateful for it. But the reality of it is it's really hard. And I don't know if it's because I already have, hormonal stuff with the endo, but I found it really, really difficult. And it was a pandemic.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so really difficult. And I mean, not as difficult as some people, but I really struggled. So I started writing a show about that. I thought that was a brilliant idea. But then, when I was in the midst of it and I had a 9-month-old baby and I wasn't sleeping, and then my day's work was going in and writing about that, I was like, Jesus fucking Christ, I need a break. But I worked with some really great people, and they kind of, I built a bit of a team. Like I had a woman called Laura Mugridge, who's also a theatre maker, who kind of mentored me. She's got a child, and I work with Contact Theatre, and there's lots of people there that I know really well. So I was able to express myself a bit and just, get through it as much as I could. I was running writing workshops for other mums as well.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, a bit like the workshops we did, but they were more like creative writing focused. And that was just a godsend, because it felt like I just set up my own mum's group, just what I needed to go. And I had to put Bobby in a creche. I got a creche there. And I just was crying for like the first session. And I remember being like, because he screamed, he hated it. And the fact that it was all just mums there saying like, it's okay, we understand, we feel the same. I was like, oh my God, I'm supposed to be like facilitating you learning, but instead we're all just like crying into cups of tea. But it was a really nice, it definitely helped me like ease myself back in, I think. And as it went on, like I said, the more Bobby slept, when he finally, which actually only happened not long ago, got used to going to nursery and not screaming every time I dropped him off, I started to really enjoy it. And now, like I say, so I've done the show now, and it was really hard. I had my mum helped me with childcare and stuff around the time of the actual show too. But it was really hard because the subject matter was just still really raw, I think. And the director I worked with was amazing as well. She's called Julia Samuels. So I had a great team to do it, but I think I did like 6 shows of it in a week. And it's a very emotional show, and I really did struggle. And I learned that, like, I'm not sure that model of like doing that many shows in a row is like works for me. And with the endometriosis creeping back in, it's like shorter weeks, less stress. I felt really stressed, really emotional, really tired. I was proud of the show, and I am proud of the show, but I think there's a lot that I've learned last year, going back to like being at work. How long? I always get messed up with last year was the first like full year I was back at work, I think. And I'm like, this year I'm taking on so much less. And if I don't feel like I have the capacity for things, then I'm just going to try and not do them if I'm like financially in the position to. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So now, like I say, I look forward to my days at work, because I know Bobby trots off to his nice nursery and has a fun day with his friends, and I'm like, oh my God, I could just like sit and write, or I do some like facilitation work as well, and it's all just, much more relaxing than looking after a 2-year-old.
So have you got any more workshops on at the moment?
So at the minute, I'm working for something called The Agency, which is run through Contact Theatre, which is where it's based in Moston and Harper Hay in North Manchester. And young people in that area apply with ideas for projects to put on. And then myself and the lead facilitator, Josh Wilkinson, kind of help them realise that idea through creative methodology. And then a few of them get funded. They go through like a panel and they get funded, and then we help them produce their projects. It's so good. It's such a great job. Like, the young people are just incredible. I really, really enjoy that. And that's on Saturdays as well, which is brilliant because free childcare. So yeah, that's one thing I'm doing at the minute. And then I can't believe I've not even spoken about this yet. I got some funding to start researching and developing kind of skills around writing a book about endometriosis.
Wow!
Yeah, but it's going to be for young girls, like, 9 to 13, I'm thinking at the minute.
That's amazing.
That is
Congratulations. That's so
Thank
cool.
you. I mean, it's literally the very first thing of like, right, I need to like research this and see if it's even doable. Do you know what I mean? And like how I can make it happen. But it's going well so far. And the idea behind it was, I kind of self-diagnosed myself to start with through reading a book. Lena Dunham's book, Not That Kind of Girl, I think it's called. Yeah. So there's a chapter in that book where she talks about endometriosis, and I read it, and it was like a light bulb moment. Like, for the first time, I just thought, oh my God, I understand what's been going on for 10 years. Finally, it was such a weird moment. But that's when I rang the doctors, and then that's how that all started, like my diagnosis started. And I just thought, how different would it have been if I had read that book when I was 13? Do you know what I mean? And it could have saved me a lot of kind of pain and stuff. So, yeah, that's kind of what I'm working on. I mean, I don't know where it's going to go, but I'm really enjoying it. Like, I love it when you find something that you really care about. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm really passionate about this. I'm going to make it happen. And it's also works around childcare and being flexible and, long-term health conditions. It's a really flexible way of working, which is another reason why I wanted to kind of develop skills in more writing books rather than writing theatre shows, doing 6-night runs, going on tour. Do you know what I mean? I'm hoping to go on tour in summer, but it's not a model that I think will suit me for a very long time. Like, I much prefer, now that I've got a child, going away less and being at home a bit more, and that kind of thing. So
I suppose as he gets older, you might feel differently. Like,
totally.
If he's a teenager, you might feel differently, and
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah, totally. I think, if I feel differently, I don't really do stand-up comedy anymore, which I used to do a lot when we first met. Over COVID as well, it was hard. It's a really difficult industry. And it's very hard when you're at I was like at the, I wasn't headlining yet, which basically means it's really terrible pay. It's really, really hard to move up to that. And it just got to the point where I was like, I'm writing my own shows and getting commission for my own shows and doing them and touring them. So I don't really want to drive to Brighton and do a 10-minute spot for 30 quid. Do you know what I mean? And then having a baby, I was like, no. I did a few gigs after I came back off maternity leave, and I was just like, I'm just too tired. It's just one extra thing that I can't kind of fit in around everything else. So I stopped gigging. But oh my God, if when Bobby's a bit older or whenever I feel like I want to start again, I just can. And I think sometimes people forget that you can just do that. Do you know, you can just go, right now, that's not working for me, so I'm just not going to do it. Well, I mean, not everyone can do that. I'm talking, I know everybody's circumstances are so different, and that's not the case. But creatively, I mean, a lot of people think, oh, I've started this, so I have to continue and work at this until I'm killing myself with it because this is what I've set out to do. Whereas actually, I think sometimes just stepping back and going, I was like, is this making me happy? I don't think it is. So, and the whole point of having a cool job is that it makes you happy. Do you know what I mean? So,
that's the most crucial question, I think, is people ask what you do, and people forget, are you happy doing what you do? Because if you're not happy, it's not worth the money, is it?
No, totally. And it's not worth the kind of but this is what I do. My friend said a really good thing to me when I was kind of going through a bit of a career crisis about letting go of the stories that you told yourself when you were 16. And then she was like, and the ones you told yourself last year. Do you know, you're always like, oh, I'm going to do this, and this is the version of myself that I imagine. But things happen and change, and so do you, and it's okay to let go of that. It doesn't mean that you've failed or that you've not achieved something. It just means that you're going, actually, I don't think I want to do that anymore. I'm going to do a different thing. And I think, actually, I think some people think, oh, carrying on with stand-up would have been the kind of thing that, you've kind of let that side of you go, and why have you given that up? And that's what really would have made you happy. But it's, from the outside, I think that's what people think sometimes. But from the inside, it's like, no, it wasn't making me happy. And actually admitting that and saying, I'm not that bothered actually about being on live at the Apollo. Do you know what I mean? I'm actually really happy just doing work that is important to me, and that I feel like I'm having an impact on people. And as long as I'm doing that, and I'm managing to see my child and my husband and my family, then I'll take that option, please. It's probably less money, but oh well.
But I think when you're creative, you often have lots of strings to your bow, and that means that you can ebb and flow with how life, whatever life throws at you. You can do your stand-up for a bit and then go and write, and then, it doesn't matter if you go back and forward or drift off into something else. I think often we as creatives sometimes get dismissed as, oh, you're just arty-farty and it's fine, when actually we've got an awful lot of skills that are very transferable across many boards.
Yeah, I think it's crazy. I wrote a post the other day, actually, because somebody was kind of like, what do you even do for your job? People think that, we just kind of lay around, writing an odd word down when it pops in our head kind of thing. And I was like, I've just had to do a funding bid, which includes like budgets and marketing strategies and outreach and just like writing a funding bid. You know, you have to literally be your own finance manager, your own HR person, your own marketing and all of this stuff. You have to have such a broad knowledge of stuff to have, you know, a successful creative career, or even to have any kind of creative career, because it's so hard to maintain it. That all my friends that are creatives have the skills that my friends who aren't creatives have, and plus they're doing a creative job. Do you know what I mean? It's it's pretty hardcore, more than people think it is.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think sometimes as well, I get frustrated because I run my own website. I've got this now. I'm then pitching to clients, same as you, pitching to clients, then figuring out what my day rate should be. And then then actually going to bloody work.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, how am I fitting all this in? But if I relinquished some of that control to an agency, I think I'd do my own head in.
Yeah, I'm a bit the same. I find it very hard to not have control over what I'm doing. And I think, you know, there's a lot of reasons for that as well. There's not that many agencies that are that good, or, you know, at taking care of people and at doing the work. And I have started working with a very great producer, though, which is really nice. And I keep forgetting that there's somebody else there to do things. She's always like, I could just do that for you. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And that's very nice. And starting to learn to give away a bit of that control, because I can't do it all. You know, if I want to have a part-time job and be a creative still, I can't also do all of the other side of things. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely like just learning how to say, actually, no, I'm putting these boundaries in because I need time. Or like today I got asked to digitally sign some T's and C's, but it was like after 5 o'clock and I was like, nope, that can wait till my next day off. Like, you know, I want to spend time cooking my tea, come and record this, chill out a bit. And I think like it's hard to put those boundaries in and relinquish a bit of control as well, to even say send in your accountant all of the bits you need to send the accountant. Like,
yeah. I think when I first went back to work, another reason why I was finding it quite difficult is because I didn't really have that many boundaries, or people I was working with didn't understand that I was only working part-time. People are just like, well, can you meet on Monday? I'm like, I don't work Mondays. Do you know what I mean? But back then I'd be like, it's fine, I'll bring Bobby. And you know what I mean? I was trying to have meetings whilst he was napping, and like taking phone calls at home whilst I was trying to make his tea, or, you know, like where I was in the middle of whatever. And it was just so chaotic, and I felt like I was just spread way too thin. And I didn't like the feeling of not being present when I was at home as well, you know, just being like, oh, I'm here, but I'm actually going to answer my emails whilst I try and get you to do something else. And don't get me wrong, every now and then that has to happen. Like, it's hard not to. But I'm like, I'm not going to answer the phone call. Like, I don't work that day. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm not answering that phone call. And like you, I'll be like, I've turned email notifications off on my phone, so they don't pop up. I wait till I was going to say my days off, because that's what they feel like, my days at work, when I read them. But unless I think like sometimes I'll be sat and Bobby will have a little nap or something, and I'll think, oh, I might just have a check and see what's in my inbox and like flag it or whatever, you know. But there's absolutely no pressure to do that, and I don't take meetings now unless they're on the days that I'm off. Or like evening things like this, but I try and be like, right, I'm going to do one a week if I'm going to do an evening thing, so that it's not every night. But I think I didn't realise how little people do that, you know. When I've been working with people, they're like, God, nobody ever. Like, a lot of people with kids end up leaving the industry because they don't. I think that people think you can't do it part-time. You know, it's like one of those things where you have to be full at it or not at all. But so when I did my show, for example, I did rehearsals I did like 2 days a week instead of 5. And I just spread it across a really long time, which I don't think happens very often. But I was like, yeah, well, we can do that. Like, who makes these rules? People think that there's these rules again, like, well, you have to do like 2 weeks intensive rehearsal. I was like, no, I just did like 2 days that week, 3 days that week, and then did like 5 weeks of that. Do you know what I mean? Instead. And it is possible, but it is possible for me in the specific way that I work. But I know it's not in so many areas of like any industry, really. It's really difficult. I know a lot of people who, even going back to kind of full-time, like, you know, pay jobs, when they go back part-time, they find like it really difficult because it feels like the same workload, but you're just doing half the hours, which it can definitely feel like. But I think I always want to say to people, like, you can, if you're freelance especially, like, make it work for you. That's one of the perks of being freelance. You don't get holiday pay, you don't get sick pay, you don't have any promotions or anything like that. Like, so yeah, just try and do it your way, basically.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think I've been freelance for over a decade, and I think it's taken me until the pandemic and my operation actually to put in boundaries and be like, no, you know, and like actually by saying no, I feel like I'm respected more and people respect my boundaries. I'm not being harsh with them. I'm just being honest. And I think actually in the long term, it stops my stress levels getting too high, which in turn makes me better during my flare-ups so I can actually work.
Oh, it totally. I think that otherwise you just burn out and burn out and burn out. And especially when you've got endometriosis, that happens 10 times quicker than it does with anyone else, doesn't it? I actually, at the start of this year, got really bad cold. Like, I don't want to say flu because I feel like flu is, you know, the worst. But it was pretty much a flu. I was really poorly. And usually I'd just be like, well, I have to work through it because I work for myself and I need to make sure that I'm on top of things and blah, blah, blah. And Bobby went to nursery for a day and I took the day off. Like, I just absolutely sat on the sofa, watched telly, did absolutely nothing, ate soup. I took that day off, and then the day after, went round to my brother's. He looked after Bobby. I just sat on the sofa again. So I took a couple of days off. And then I worked again on Friday. And because I'd taken the time off, I finished what I needed to do that week on Friday and Saturday. And I just thought, if I tried to power through that, I wouldn't have got it finished. And I would have just felt worse. And, you know, yeah. So I was like, what a great thing to learn at the start of the year.
Yeah.
Just take time off if you can when you feel ill. And
I'm nodding at you, having just worked a full week with a bacterial throat infection, because that classic freelancer life where I was like, shit, I've got 3 new clients. I need to go and see them all. One of the studios was so cold, I was in thermals, and it actually made me worse, so that on Friday night I had to ring the emergency doctor and get antibiotics because my skin, it started coming out of my skin. And then Nath was at work on Saturday, but he literally, as he said goodbye to me Saturday morning, he went, don't you dare leave the bedroom. And I was like, okay. But actually taking that 2 days, and I've had today off as well, despite not sounding very well, I feel so much better just for taking that time. Whereas I shouldn't have been quite such a tuna melt. I should have just had Thursday off and gone to the doctors then and, you know, had a day. But you just power through. And I think as well, like we were saying before we started recording, when you've got a chronic illness as well, your pain levels are so much different to other people. Yeah. And you I can push stuff to the back of my head. Yeah. And they said to me tonight, he went, you're actually been quite ill, haven't you? And I was like, yeah, I suppose I have. He's like trying to get me to admit it. Yeah. And but I just push through because I'm like, well, you know, shit, I've got a mortgage to pay for. I need to push through. Exactly. But I do try much like yourself, I try if I can to take the time off when I'm ill, but you know, it's rare that this kind of stuff happens, but you do need to take the time to look after yourself, because otherwise you end up even worse.
Yeah, and I think building that into just your routine anyway is a really good idea. You know, have, like I say, like working less hours. I mean, a lot of that is because childcare is extortionate. But I also only want to work part-time whilst Bobby is as young as he is. But I try and build in time to chill as well, and to make sure that I'm looking after myself, you know, when I can, because that's something that I think I struggled with for ages, just always feeling guilty about it and always making myself work when, you know, just constantly feeling like I was apologising to people for not being able to do things. And I don't know if it's having a child or the pandemic or whatever, but I now do feel a lot like, well, I just can't do it, so there's no point in getting. I feel a bit more like that. Like I said before, definitely hard with a child, but with work, I feel a bit more able to just go, well, no, sorry, I'm ill. So I'm just not going to do it. Apart from the hard thing when you freelance, though, it is like, but if I don't work, I don't get paid.
Yeah.
Don't get sick pay. I don't get just paid because I'm off. Like you could lose like 200 quid in a day because you're ill. So that does make it quite hard. Which is why trying to rest when you don't have loads of, you know, big paydays is probably a good thing as well.
Yeah. I do think that as well, as women, we've been given the choice. This might be controversial, but we've been given the choice to have everything, to have a career and be at work 5 days a week, have children, have a house that we look after, have pets and everything else. Yet that something has to sacrifice. And I feel like more often than not, it's actually us.
Yeah, I really went through as a feminist when I had a baby and was like, I don't want to go to work again. Like a real internal battle with all of that. Like, oh, but you know, people fought for you to be able to have it all, like you say, and do everything. But you're right when you said it's a choice, and it should be a choice. It should be like, it's great that we have the choice to do that, but my choice is that I'm not going to do that. And that is just as valid, you know, if people want to stay at home, because there's so much stigma around that now. My mum was saying it's funny, it's like swapped over from, you know, she didn't go to work until we were older, and she said, and I, you know, there was more stigma around people that did go to work then. And now, you know, it's back the other way of being, you know, people that don't work. I was like, what do they do though? And Jesus Christ, they do the hardest job in the fucking world is what they do. And yeah, it's not possible. And that's something that I learned pretty quick as well. It's not possible to do it all. Like, unless, I think my way of doing it now is doing it, you know, part-time when I can, and not putting too much pressure on myself to work-wise. I think at the minute, I think that the attitude, like you said, of like, well, when Bobby's older, if I want to like go full steam ahead with that stuff again, then I can. But one thing I'm realising is it's nicer when you don't. It's actually, you know, I feel better and work feels more manageable and everything feels nicer. And I, you know, I'm still achieving a lot and I'm still working in a job that I really love. And I think that that's the best achievement ever. So yeah, battling that thing that people kind of think you should be always working and juggling a baby and have a great house and, you know, a good relationship with your husband and be going out and socializing because you're still your own person. You know, there's so much coming from all angles, and it's just about going, I'm just going to do whatever I fucking want to do. And that's what the choice is. Do you know what I mean? And actually, that's what feminism should be about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think going back to the point with your mum as well, my mum didn't go back to work until my sister was in reception. So she had about 6 years off. But back in the day, I'm saying back in the day like I'm really old, but like back in the 80s and early 90s, a household could survive on one income.
Yes. Oh my God,
it's just not fucking possible now. Like, it's just not. And I think that's where the difference in generation is as well. Like, because my dad said to my sister when she was pregnant, are you going to have like 5 years off? And my sister was like, no, like,
no,
I haven't got a money tree in the back garden.
Yeah.
But also it's just a different generational thing where like when we were tiny, dad's income covered everything.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Same. You could live off one income. And also now it's hard because there's that, you know, you need to go back to work, but also the cost of childcare is so extortionate that it's almost like working out the exact right balance where you're not, and people who have help from grandparents and stuff, it, you know, saves them a lot of money. It's like I basically pay another mortgage every month so that Bobby goes to nursery. He goes to nursery 2 days a week and I have to pay that. So far it's worked out, but if I ever got to a point where I wasn't, it's scary when you're freelance as well, because if I can't cover it for a month, then I can't take him out for a bit and put him back in. Like nursery places are like insanely, like they're like gold dust. It's so hard to get them in places, so you can't just, and also it's not good for him, you know, to be taken in and out of places. So I have to cover that every month. But so I couldn't afford to work full time because then I'd have to pay for Bobby to be in nursery full time, and as a freelancer I'd have to be earning like, so, you know what I mean, consistently. Whereas now I can be like, oh, like next week I've not got paid work, but the week after, you know how it is, you know, sometimes you have blocks of work, sometimes you have less. I can kind of get through on that. But if I was paying for him to be full time, I'd have to be absolutely killing myself to earn the money to pay for someone else to look after him.
Yeah, and I think lots of other things come with that as well, like possibly guilt that he's then being looked after by somebody else, and then the cost of it. I mean, like friends of mine have got kids in Manchester nurseries as well, and they've said the same, like if they pull her out, you know, for a week for illness or whatever, they've still got to pay.
Yeah.
And it's like, I cannot get my head around this. Like, I understand the people, the people, childminders looking after the kids have to be paid fairly. But I just don't understand who's getting off with, I don't know, £1,500 a month or whatever it is to put a kid in nursery for a month. Like,
it's insane. Bobby moved nurseries, but when he was at his first nursery he was at, they used to close on bank holidays but still charge. So, yeah.
Cheeky fuckers.
Yeah. So they'd be like, oh, we're not open. He used to go Fridays and Mondays when he went there. So, like, Easter weekend, they were closed. And I turned up with him because I was like, well, they sent me my bill and it's on the bill, so I assume they're open. And I turned up with him and they were closed. And I was like, but I've paid you for today. They were like, oh, yeah, we still charge for bank holidays, but we don't open. But the one he's at now, which is loads better, doesn't do that. But I just thought, are you, like, I understand the illness thing because they have to cover their costs. So they have to have, you know, that certain amount that they know is coming in every month or every week or whatever. But when they're closed, then they're not paying staff. They're not paying, you know, any other costs. So yeah, it's absolutely, and I could work those days, and I know loads of people that, you know, don't work in offices. So many people, and that's another thing about childcare as well. It's like not very flexible. I've got a friend who's a nurse, and luckily she can get like flexible days of her nursery, but that's so rare. So, you know what I mean? And if you're a nurse and you have different shifts every week, but your kids are only in certain days, you know, like it's just a ridiculously bad system that needs looking at. Yeah,
it's a mind fuck that no new parent needs, really, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
to be honest, like I think my sister and her husband have done it quite well. He's he's only working 4 days a week. I say only, but he's working 4 days a week. And then my sister's husband's mum has got Littlen 1 day a week as well. So he's only in 3 days a week. But without that, without that balance, what do you do?
Yeah, exactly. It's very hard. And for single parents as well, it's even hard. But yeah, one of the many things in this country that, that needs sorted out.
yeah. It's not the only thing that's fucked, is it?
No, exactly.
Jesus. But no, I do think employers are getting better at knowing how to support pregnant women and mothers as well, and dads. But I feel like dads don't get as much of the heat that women do.
Yeah, I think, for mums as well, it's like, some people breastfeed and going back to work's really hard because of that reason. They've got to pump and try and get their child to take a bottle that they might not have ever had before in their life. And just the emotional roller coaster of it all is a lot. But yeah, I do think a lot of places have a lot more kind of perks when it comes to that stuff now, which is really good. Unfortunately, I don't work for them though.
Yeah, that's it. My sister, I spoke to my sister last week, and she has just gone to the board and got the maternity pay sorted out. So she was like, this is shit, and wrote a proposal and got it changed, and like championed for it to get changed, and they changed it literally the next week. And she said she had a pregnant co-worker come up to her and said, thank you, because you've literally changed my life now.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. We need people like your sister to be doing these things. It's fucking annoying that she has to. Yeah. But also brilliant that, that'll make such a huge difference to so many people. I mean, I think about when I applied for so I got statutory maternity pay because I'm freelance. And they tried to give me, it was so hard to apply for, which was definitely purposeful. Yeah. And then they tried to give me 90 quid a month. And so I had to appeal against it, and I ended up getting the full amount, more than that, getting the full amount. But I was it took me a long time to and a lot of phone calls to get it sorted out. And I just thought, not everyone has the fucking time to do this, or not. Some people would just read that and go, "Oh, that's all I get," Whereas I was like, "There's no way that's all I get. I've been working, a lot. There's no way that that's all I get." But yeah, so it's really it's a really difficult system, basically, and it's hard.
I think it is for the whole So a bit of a personal thing, but when the pandemic kicked off, I ended up with no work. Because I'm asthmatic, we were unsure about me going in and out of studios, I ended up catching fucking COVID 3 times anyway. But
oh, God.
So I said to Nath, I said, well, I'm not earning. So I've paid into the system for my whole life. I'm going to see if we can get something out. So not only did they say, no, you're fine just on your husband's wage, which our wages got cut in half during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Not only that, it was so hard. I think that I'm relatively intelligent, and I found that system hard to go through. And then when I'd got through it, the fuckers went, "Dear Mr. Barber." And I was like, are you for real? It's me. I wrote such a PMT ragey message. Yeah. And I was like, it's me, the woman, that is asking for this, not my husband doesn't owe me. What the fuck?
Yeah.
And we ended up I ended up not getting anything, but I said to Nave, I was like, if I don't try, how am I going to know? But yeah, it was a bit of paper, quite a lot of paperwork, and then he had to do some paperwork, and I understand the frustration of people when they're trying to get through the system, and it makes me understand why people then don't want to leave that system, because it's so hard to get back into if you need to.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you. And it's purposefully difficult And like you say, yeah, I think I'm relatively intelligent, and applying for maternity leave was one of the hardest things that I've done in terms of like form filling out and all the logistics and all of that kind of stuff, which just isn't fair. But
no. Oh, the government. We won't go down this tangent.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, it has been so lovely to chat to you, Amy.
Thank
it's been
you.
Really
it's been lovely
nice
to chat to you as well.
It's been so nice to see your face. Oh.
Thank you.
And where can we find you? Can we find you on Instagram and via contact on theatre? And
so Instagram at Amy Vreeke, and then I don't really use Twitter. I'm not really much of a tweeter. I'm on Facebook as well. Amy Vreeke comedian, I think it is on Facebook. So you can catch me on there. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Amy.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please rate, follow and share, as it really helps this little podcast out. And if you have found value in the podcast and you have the means to, I do have a Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. This will help keep the podcast going. Join me next week for another fantastic guest. Bye!